I want to show you 4 things this morning that I call higher purpose of praying. Because you can journey through this life and walk by your skill and technocracy. You can walk through life by human wisdom. And then you build something, and after 35 years, you see a man that has a beautiful family. Sons graduating from the university after 35 years, you hear that they were driving home for Christmas and a trailer crushed them. Because he doesn't know how to store data in heaven. The devil was just waiting for him. He labored. After 35 years, a trap was set for him 35 years before he got married. But he doesn't know how to enter into the future. Men of prayer don't die. They journey from time to eternity. They can determine what will happen to them on earth. They can shape things on earth. They can move the hand of God. They are never taken unawares. Even if they die, it's because they submit themselves to it. That's why men like Paul will go to Jerusalem. He knew that he needed to bear testament before the king. So for him, that was his vent and a gateway into heaven. Things don't happen to them. They make things happen. Imagine how frustrating it will be for a man to labor for 35 years and then you hear that him and his family are wiped away because a witch, sometimes it's even a 10-year-old witch, stood on the road and then he stopped the front tire and the car somersaulted. A witch. You know what that witch may be doing? Maybe that's her IT. And then she came to do her IT on your family that you labor to build for 35 years. A witch, IT on your family. Men ought. You don't know what I want to talk about. I was a preacher. I was popular and known. But every 3 years, a hawk came to my family and picked somebody. My mother died. My cousin died. My brother died. And I said, wait, what is this? And then God began to teach me priesthood intelligence. You pray for people, they are healed. You pray for things, they happen. But you don't have a surveillance over your family. Because your prayer is directed to needs. Your prayer is not an economy in heaven. The day you begin to pray as an economy, then you create a radar around your family. The devil will have no passageway anymore. And then this year, the same hawk came. And when the hawk came, we saw it in the spirit. And I tapped my friend, I said, come. And we stood up around 12, we began to pray. And an angel descended in the room. The angel was burning with his everything about him was like a sun. And then I knew judgment had come and we released judgment. 2 months later, the man died. He began to decay in his room. And before he died, 2 months later, he confessed. And he said, he killed my brother 2 years ago. That means the life of my brother was in my hand. But because I didn't understand priesthood, my brother fell off my hand. When I was crying and asking God why, God was the one asking me why. Because the purpose of that young man was in my hand, but I didn't know I was a priest. I will pray for things to happen, but I never knew that prayer was an economy that preserved the heritage of God in a life and in a family. The purposes of God will never be accomplished until men know how to fill the clouds of heaven with the dew of prayer. Because men ought always to pray and not to faint. This microphone I'm carrying today was an investment of my mother for more than 30 years. She kept me before the Lord. She said, this one will serve you. And many years later in the university, I met strange friends and they began to teach me the way of the club. The thing became worse when my mom died and I said I will become a bad boy. But you know what? My voice couldn't go to heaven. Her voice was already registered in heaven. And on the strength of her voice, there was a signature on my forehead. Even though I said I will be a bad boy, heaven couldn't hear that one anymore. Men ought. It was in the club when I was dancing that a light came out of the wall and arrested me like this. So I was carried to the altar. I didn't come here because I chose to serve God. Men ought always to pray and not to fail. Did you read about Jacob? The guy was a man of the senses, a man of the flesh. He was the custodian of the Abrahamic blessing. He lived for his appetite. But he was journeying and then he came to Bethel. And when his head touched the altar of Abraham, the heavens opened. He was arrested. The guy had no plan to serve God. But what? Men ought always to pray. So Abraham negotiated the destiny of his children on the altar of prayer. So long as you are from the bloodline of Abraham, you have no choice but to serve God. Because men ought. The altars of Abraham will travel with you. Anywhere you go, that altar will gather you back to the Lord. Men ought always to pray. When a spirit speaks, pray that you discern. We spend hours in our offices. You are in the office from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. You have 10 million in the bank. You think that is what life is about. You are a joker. May no demon do an IT on your family. You don't know the deeper meaning of life. May God help you. Let me tell you, the Bible said there is an evil day for every man. Because the devil is roaring, moving like a roaring lion, looking for whom to devour. The day when evil comes, may God help you to have enough stature. Because he said if you faint in the day of trouble, it's not because God is not on the throne. It's because your strength is small. Men ought. He said the prayers of the saints, they ascend to heaven as orders. They are stored in golden vials. What is your storage in heaven? Men ought. Men ought. Men, may we not testify for something that the devil wants to use to ridicule us. May I not stand and testify about my daughter, whereas the devil has set a trap for her to become a harlot. Because I don't know the intelligence of guiding her future. Before my children are born, I will tell them what they will do. Did you read about Jacob? He said, gather around me, you sons of Israel. I will tell you the things that will befall you. Why? He said, as a prince, thou hast power with God and with men and hast prevailed. So if Jacob tells his son, he said, the scepter will not depart from Judah until Shiloh come. It doesn't matter where Judah lives. Anywhere he goes, he's a king among men. Anywhere, he's a king. Because a man of prayer has altered his destiny. And the moment he speaks, the codings are documented in the heavens. Even the powers of the heavens will support him. Because the man spoke. Did you see when Isaac blessed Jacob? He said, I bless you with corn and wine. What about inflation? Inflation is not a factor. Because he has blessed him with the dew of heaven. Anywhere that guy goes, he will prosper. Men ought always to pray and not to faint. Why would our children be wayward? We don't have stature in the spirit. You can wake up and tell your child that so long as you live, you will serve the Lord. And we have no choice. Because when you speak, the heavens, you mobilize angels. You mobilize the laws of the spirit realm. You mobilize nature. He can go to a harlot and the harlot will reject him. Because you say so long as you live, so long as you live, you will serve the Lord. Men ought always to pray. We don't know the economy of prayer. Things don't happen to men of prayer. You can stand up and tell your child, anywhere you go, you are a king. Your child may think it's luck. Anywhere he goes, people will serve him. Did you read? Oh, Jesus need to help us. Jesus need to help us. Men ought. Men ought. What is your prayer life like? So that you don't labor for 50 years and then the wind comes from Hades and sweep away your labor. And then you cry, you say, God, where are you? Jesus is a spirit. So he spoke from the depths of heaven. He said, men ought always to pray and not to faint.